Alright, hello and welcome everyone to our channel. In case you're new, I'm Nick and this is Shannon. And we just got back from Disney World in Orlando, Florida. And while we were there, we went to both Disney World and Universal. And we just wanted to share with you guys our experience and
the differences between each park and which one you might feel is safer for you to go to. So the first park that we visited was Disney World Opening Day Magic Kingdom.
And the first thing that we noticed was going through security. They changed up the way they do things a lot. So before, you'd basically have to open up your bags and show security everything that's in there and they dig through it. But now they don't do that. Instead, you walk through metal detector scanner first, and if your bag sets it off, then they'll go ahead and take a look. Otherwise, they just have everyone walk straight through, so security goes through a lot faster than it normally does.
They tell you before to take out any water bottles, metal water bottles, or chargers and stuff that might set it off, or pins maybe.
And one thing that Disney does is they do not allow you to bring gator necks.
They specified that rule a couple days after they opened, but you're not allowed to wear the gator neck. It has to have ear loops.
And an important note for Disney is, for Disney, you do need a reservation to get into the parks. You can't just show up.
Yeah, you can't just show up. You gotta think ahead now.
Also, something that we noticed throughout all of the parks at Disney was lots of the smaller shops were completely closed and do not open at any point in the day. Because we were kind of disappointed when we went to Magic Kingdom and saw that the main pin store was closed there, because we are big pin traders. So it was kind of sad. We could peek through the window and see all their limited edition pins that were basically in there since March. And we're like, oh, I want to go get those, but you can't because they're closed and they don't have any plans to open, I guess.
And then we walked a little bit. We tried to go in my favorite restaurant and it was closed.
And then another thing that Disney has been doing is basically parades are a big part of Disney and everything that they do. And what they're doing now to help minimize crowds is, instead of having parades at specific times, they basically have parades running throughout the entire day. And they are
little mini ones.
Little mini ones, basically like one cart going at a time. They have it going so frequently so that way there's no need for people to go ahead and wait all day there and cause a bunch of crowds of people forming. So yeah, you'll just be walking around the parks and you're like, oh, there's all the princesses. Oh, there they go. And then Disney, for the most part, had no virtual queues. It was all in-person lines, with the exception of Galaxy's Edge, which they do virtual queues at 3 different times throughout the day to try and prevent people from rushing to the park, I guess. Virtual queues come out at 10 a.m., 1 o'clock, and 4 o'clock.
When we were there, but now they changed it to only 2 times.
Oh.
Yeah.
And if you do want to get onto Rise of the Resistance and Galaxy's Edge, you gotta make sure you are ready to get in those virtual queue lines right when they release, because we tried at exactly 1 o'clock and it sold out immediately.
I would say if you're gonna go, be okay not going on that ride, because you only have 2 chances and it's really hard.
So don't expect to get on, just be happy if it does happen. Another thing that Disney has implemented was screens in between the lines. Yeah, so people walking right next to each other in line can't really spread germs because there's a big old glass wall in between the lines, which was really nice. Okay.
They also had the screens on some of the rides, I know they had it in Jungle Cruise.
And they also had it on the safari ride in Animal Kingdom. They basically put up this big old plastic barrier in between the 2 seats. On Pirates of the Caribbean, what they did was they had a party in the front of the boat, all the middle ones were empty, and then they had a party in the back of the boat. So that way everyone would have a little bit of space in between them. So Disney still does have character meets going on. What they'll typically do is they have the characters up on the stage, that way they could be far enough away from everyone while still being able to take the photos. So they had a lot of characters up in high, 2nd-story buildings, just waving to everyone and all the crowds. And then one thing that we kind of did notice is in some of the smaller shops in Disney, they could get kind of crowded, especially if they're right at the end of one of the rides. We were in this one shop right next to PhilharMagic, and well, you basically could not walk in that shop because it was so crowded. I was kind of surprised they were able to have that many people in that shop, because in most of their larger gift shops and everything, they have cast members at every door keeping track of the amount of people, but in some of the smaller ones, it didn't seem like that was going on.
Since they don't have a lot of restaurants open, they would get pretty crowded.
Yeah, one of the first days we were there, one of the restaurants that was open, there wasn't a lot open, so everyone just kind of like piled over to this one, and there was a huge crowd that was forming outside the building there.
And like, we went to Magic Kingdom 2 other days, and there was usually a crowd.
So for the cafeterias, there are 2 different lines on the outside of the building before they let you in. They have a standard line, which is a lot longer than their mobile order line, so they highly recommend you do mobile order, and as soon as it says your food is ready for pickup, they let you inside the building. Otherwise, you can stand in the standard line and wait to go in to place your order, but that one you're gonna have to wait a lot longer. We recommend you place your mobile order while you're waiting in the normal line.
Or even before that, because
yeah, when
you get there, you can just go in instead of having to wait in the sun.
So on water rides like Cali River Rapids and Splash Mountain, Disney still does require everyone to keep their mask on at all times.
Usually don't get that wet, so it's not that much of a problem.
So it's not like waterboarding if you wear your mask on those rides, because you don't get very wet, so it's not too much of an issue. And surprisingly, even with everything going on, Disney still does have a little bit of pin trading going on. They have no cast member pin trading available at all. It is all through pin boards that are located throughout some of the parks. There's not too many of them. We found about 4 in Magic Kingdom, and there's about 1 or 2 in every other park. One thing that we noticed Disney was doing is as you come into park and the cast members are directing you where to park,
they will have cars parked every other spot. And then later in the day, they'll fill those spots, so that usually people who are parked by each other will not come into contact.
Yeah, so it was a very good idea by Disney not to have everyone just like spot to spot to spot, because when you're getting out of the car, you're going to be right next to the other party right next to you.
In every line for a ride, there was a line that you have to stand on, and the lines were 6 feet apart.
So an issue that we found, this was not only Disney, this was also in Universal, is what happens is each party stands on each of these lines, which are 6 feet apart, but the problem happens when there is a party of like 5 or 6 people all standing on this little line, and they kind of creep over to the line in front of them and the line behind them, so you're not really 6 feet apart, you're more like 2 to 3 feet apart like you normally would be in a normal line. So we recommend
you try to make your own 6 feet, and if somebody's getting too close, you might have to be comfortable enough to tell them.
Yeah, just ask them.
Step back a little bit, because the lines are more of a guideline, but you as a person, everyone that's there needs to be aware.
And just make sure that you are 6 feet apart from the party in front of you, and make sure you tell the party behind you if they're not 6 feet, because we did have some people, you know, kind of creeping up on us, they're all anxious trying to get on the ride, but it's not like you're gonna go any faster if you're like 2 feet closer to me, like. But
and that is where a lot of people, some people who don't like to follow the rules, will kind of take their mask off sometimes.
Yeah, so that another thing that I saw happening was, this wasn't very often, but there would be some individuals that would take their mask off when there was no cast members around, and when they saw cast members coming around, they'd put it back on.
Yes, that happened to us in the Twilight Tower of Terror ride line, and that was one of the lines where a lot of the line didn't have a cast member watching. Mostly in Disney, they had like a cast member in each spot, but in the Tower of Terror line, they didn't.
We heard that Disney was not going to be showing ride photos if you took your mask off, but this party behind us, one person in their party kind of had their mask like under their mouth,
like
their mouth here. It was like on their chin, basically, and our ride photos still showed up. So I was very surprised that happened.
Yeah, I feel like some cast members are being stricter than others.
Alright, and moving on to Universal Studios.
Our first trip there.
Yeah, so this was our first time ever going to Universal Studios Orlando. And one thing that we noticed there was they actually required everyone to sanitize their hands before getting onto any ride, which is something Disney did not do, because Disney basically just had hand sanitizer stations before and after every ride, so you had the option to put it on, but Universal actually required it.
So one thing that's different with Universal Studios is they have a lot of like 3D glasses rides, a lot more than Disney, and that kind of became an issue for us because with the mask,
it kind of fogs up your 3D glasses, so you can't exactly see while you're wearing the mask, because when you got the mask, your breath is kind of shooting up in front of your eyes. And
it's like, I don't know what they would do to fix it, but just be aware that might happen.
So what I typically try to do is kind of like extend my glasses out a little bit so they wouldn't get as fogged up.
Yeah, you just put them here and then you tilt your head.
But what most people, and what we observed was most people would pull their mask under their nose, that way that wouldn't happen. You're not really supposed to do that because...
You're not supposed to.
And Universal does not require you to wear your mask on water rides because we went to Islands of Adventures, and well, yeah.
It might be a little understandable because some of their rides, you get soaked. Like, you are underwater in some of those. The one with the Popeyes.
Yeah, they make it very clear in the line, you're gonna get wet.
You
but
will get soaked.
We did not realize how wet you get on that ride.
And I think it would kind of be dangerous if you wore your mask. So at least you're not with any other parties.
Yeah, so at least for us, they basically had only one party per cart, so that's why it wasn't too much of an issue.
We also did have like a little bit of an issue with spacing. We saw on the Despicable Me ride though, they had boxes for parties, and we thought that was a lot better.
Yeah, that was a really good idea because it tells you kind of like your party needs to stay inside this box here instead of the lines where people like, you know, extend to the front and the back of their lines, so they're not really 6 feet apart from most parties.
So hopefully they start doing that a little bit more on rides.
And for most of Universal's popular rides, they did have virtual queues for them. For example, Hagrid's. So we just had to go on the app, choose a time slot that we wanted. Most of the time slots were only like 20 or 30 minutes out, so you were able to get on pretty quickly. And then once you got in line, it was pretty much just walk on. So we walked straight to the front and got on.
Twice because we were able to get 2 virtual queues for that Hagrid's ride. So it was really nice. I liked the virtual queue.
With Harry Potter Land being very popular, it was really crowded in there.
And the way that they made it, you know, it's supposed to be like Harry Potter where it's small little shops and it wasn't really made for
social
space.
distancing.
It was a little bit harder in Harry Potter Land, specifically the Islands of Adventure part.
And one thing that they were doing at all the cafeterias at the Universal parks was basically what they do is they seat you and then you place your mobile order and then they'll bring your food to you once it is ready. So it's more of like a restaurant experience than a cafeteria. On top of going to Universal Studios and Islands of Adventure, we also checked out their water park, Volcano Bay.
I was very surprised.
This one was a much different experience than all the other parks. Yeah, all of Disney's water parks are closed, and I'm pretty sure it is for this reason. You can't wear a mask in a water park. So
what they did was you wear a mask when you're walking around in like the restaurants. When you're going in the water and stuff, you can take your mask off.
In the water, on the rides, walking around, masks aren't required and nobody wears them, so it feels like a normal day there. It basically felt like time traveling to before March. It was still very crowded there. Not a lot of people practice social distancing.
They did have the lines.
They did have the markers.
But it just depends on who you're around, if they're actually going to follow them. There's nobody really watching.
Yeah, and even though they might have reduced capacity, it still seems pretty crowded, especially in their wave pool.
Where you can't really make yourself social distance. Like, I kept bumping into people on accident because the waves are making you go. So
basically the best you could really do is be like arm's length away from people, which is about like 3 feet, which is not 6 feet, and no one's wearing a mask. So yeah, so we would not recommend going to water parks if you're trying to avoid getting sick.
There's one more thing about Universal
Okay,
Studios. Their hand sanitizer is so smelly. It smells gross.
Oh my gosh, okay.
I just want to say, you have to use their hand sanitizer for the ride. So don't plan on using your own, and it might be smelly. Just be aware.
No.
Some of them smelled like poo. Some of them smelled like tequila. So.
You're so silly, Shay.
Just be aware.
She's just a silly little girl. But other than that, that has been our experience going to the theme parks in Orlando, Florida. So hopefully you guys have learned some tips from this video, know what to expect when going to those parks, and how to stay a little bit more safe. So this one is a bit of a tricky question. Which one was better?
Because some parks were better than others. Like, some of them did things better. Overall, it's really tough to say.
Yeah, it was pretty even. If anything, Disney might have a slight edge over them just because...
Just a little. They were a little more strict. I think what really just pushes it a little over is they have the screens and the lines. That was different than Universal because people didn't really follow the lines. If you're gonna go, make sure you don't yell at the cast members and stuff. You know, it's new for everybody.
Especially in line for security, it's very hard to hear them because they are wearing face masks and then a face shield. So their voice kind of gets muffled sometimes, and it's kind of hard to hear what they're saying.
And they might also have a hard time hearing you.
But that has been our experience going to the theme parks here in 2020. So you guys can kind of know what to expect when going there.
Hopefully it helps you prepare if you're going to go to one of the parks.
If you guys wouldn't mind supporting our channel and hitting that like button, we'd certainly appreciate it. And if you guys have any more questions about the parks, be sure to leave them in the comments below, and we'll do our best to respond to everybody's. But other than that, that is all for today's video, and hopefully we'll see you guys in our next one.
Have a magical day.